Your face is broken. Don't forget.
My face is broken.
Knowing what we know now, it probably wasn't the best decision. Well, we had quite the eventful adventure last night, and getting stuck in the middle of the woods in pitch black conditions was only half of it. As the title of this video states, my wife, Jessica, broke her face. Let me set the stage for you a little bit here. It was a perfect fall day yesterday. The leaves are just starting to change here in the upstate of South Carolina, and there was a nice cool breeze. We love to run the trails at our local state park, and yesterday we decided we needed to get out there and get some activity in. Thought we'd go a little bit later in the afternoon so the air was a little bit cooler, and maybe we could catch a sunset on one of the trails that we hadn't been on yet. If you've been following along, you've probably seen some of these trails. We usually bring a camera with us and just kind of document the treks that we take. But because we've done so many of those videos already up to this point, I didn't think to take a camera with me this time. We take pride in being prepared, and I'm confident that we can generally handle any situation that comes our way. But there's definitely a couple of lessons to be learned from the situation we ran into last night. Now here's what happened. We got to the park around 5:30, 5:45, something like that. Now the park closes at 8, and most of the trails are about 1.5 miles or something like that. And generally we get them done in about 30 minutes, maybe 40 if we're taking our time. But we do like to hustle through them and even run a little bit. So we knew we had plenty of time to get finished up and get out of there. Even though the trail that we decided to take is slightly longer than normal, I think it's maybe just over 2 miles, something like that, depending on the route that you take. Now, it really is a beautiful trail. The scenery is incredible, and I'm glad we took the one we did. It was fantastic. The views are great. The trees are just, it's a beautiful part of the park. Now, by no means is the trail a difficult one. It's just a little bit more intense, a little bit more rugged than the rest of the trails at the park. There's some elevation changes, and again, the terrain is a little bit more rugged than the rest of them. I figured we were about halfway through, and we made pretty good pace. We were moving along pretty well. We came to kind of a clearing where the trail got really wide, and although it was at a slight decline, it was pretty smooth. There wasn't a lot of obstacles in the trail, and it was just relatively flat. Now, the sun was starting to set, and being deep in the woods, we were losing daylight pretty quickly, and we could tell that. So we decided to pick up the pace a little bit. Now, we had one bottle of water with us. Both of us were wearing our Apple Watches, and Jess did have her cell phone with her. Now, moving at a light jog, covering about 1/4 mile or so, that's when disaster struck. I was keeping pace with Jess, probably 10 or 15 feet behind her. Again, the trail was at a slight decline, wide open and relatively flat. However, there happened to be a root or something going across the trail, and it just caught her toe. And in slow motion, I watched her tumble forward, hands go out in front of her to catch her fall. But as she started to go down, her hands came up and under her, and she rolled right on top of her face. And needless to say, she sat up with a bunch of dirt in her mouth, some blood running down her nose, and some scrapes on her face. She wasn't feeling too good. We did have that bottle of water with us, so we were able to rinse her mouth out and get some of that gravel and dirt out, and I could inspect her teeth a little bit. None were chipped or broken that I could tell, but there was some blood coming out around the gums on the upper part of her mouth. And it did look like there was a cut up in there deep. So she did hit her face pretty good, and her lips immediately started to swell. Now, this is when the urgency of needing to get out of the woods really started to set in. And the question became, which way do we go? Do we go back the way we came, knowing that it was a little bit more rugged terrain, sort of steep inclines, and now we would be on the decline, and we were losing light quick. Knowing we were only about halfway, we weren't really sure which way to go. Do we continue on the path, which seemed, looking at the map, to be a little bit more straight? There were less switchbacks. It was kind of more of a direct route back to the parking area. Or do we go back, knowing the terrain, but knowing that it was a little bit more tough? Once we were able to catch our breaths a little bit and get a little bit of composure and decide what we needed to do, we determined to just continue going the direction we were heading. Obviously, we had just been on a stretch of trail that was probably at least 1/2 mile long, which was very wide open and relatively flat. So we thought this is probably the best route considering the type of terrain that we had just passed through to get there. Knowing what we know now, it probably wasn't the best decision. The terrain was tough. Although the trail itself was relatively straight, there were a lot of steep declines and then uphill again, and rocks and water features, small creeks and things that we had to cross with some very wet and slippery rocks. A lot of trails that were at angles like this, so you were kind of trying to hold your balance and not slide off the edge. And not to mention the fact that it was pitch black. You could see the haze start coming in. The animals started to get more active. There were some owls in the distance, and the fact that she was in a lot of pain, it just really was kind of an ominous situation that we found ourselves in. and the time was clicking by so quickly. If you remember, I mentioned that the park closes at 8 o'clock. It was 7 o'clock, and then before you know it, it was 7:10, and then 7:25, and there was no sign of the trail coming to an end. And of course, you lose reception, and you can't get an idea. You can't really catch your bearings in terms of where you're at or how far away you are. And again, this being a trail that we had never been on, we really didn't know what to expect. As soon as we started to get into an area where it was a little bit easier going, all of a sudden you'd be hit with a rock wall that you had to climb up and try to move along. Now, the scenery of this trail would be incredible in the daylight. It came out to a small, very calm lake. Now, this might have been the concussion starting to kick in, but she was very fascinated by the beauty of the moon reflecting off of the very still water in the small pond. So it was very beautiful, and I can't wait to go back there in the daylight, but at night it was a little bit treacherous. The camera does not pick up how steep it is. Oh my God. All right. We're still on the right trail. Oh, we got a dam.
Huh?
We got a dam.
Whoa.
You want to come and do a face check? Yep, it is broken. Looking up at the night sky, it does seem like it's illuminated. It's not completely pitch black, but when you're in the trees and you're under all that heavy foliage, it is black. It's very dark in the woods. Oh, look at this. It's a nice clearing, but you can't see anything. Got an emergency situation here.
Right there.
We don't have time. We don't have time to stop.
It's your nerve dead again.
That's a reflection in the pond. I know. Remember.
Like this, you get it both.
Okay, we got the moon and the reflection, but we gotta go. Your face is broken. Don't forget.
My face is broken.
And we have no idea how much further we have to go. That's the crazy thing. I did try to use the cell phone, the flashlight, a little bit to illuminate the trail just because my fear was that Jess would fall again. Some of the trails or some of the paths were maybe 20, 24 inches wide at the most. Again, they were at weird angles and there was a lot of roots and rocks and things sticking up. So the last thing I wanted was for her to, lose her footing and slip down an edge or fall down and hurt her wrist even further. So we tried it out, but what I found was that the light from the cell phone, although it is very bright in close distance, it's not very direct light, so it just floods everything and it really doesn't help all that much. And what it really does is makes it impossible to see in front of you. So the darkness of the trail ahead of us became even more dark just because of all the light near us. So we quickly shut that off and just continued moving on. I'm happy to say that finally we made it. And this trail actually ends at a different point from where you enter. So you actually come out onto the road and then you have to travel down the road a little bit to the parking area, to the trailhead. So we came out to the clearing and thought, thank goodness, it was 7:30. We're gonna make it to the truck. We just have to walk this probably half mile down the road itself, but at least it's paved and it's smooth and we can make it. And we got cleaned up at the truck and decided that heading home was best. Originally, we thought maybe we'd just take her to the emergency room or an urgent care to at least check her teeth, but the bleeding sort of had stopped a little bit. We got home and got cleaned up and got some Advil and some ice packs and started to try to, head off that swelling a little bit. So this morning, she's still feeling a little bit rough, but I think she's in decent spirits. Now, worrying about having to go to work tomorrow with a broken face. I guess we can chuckle at it now a little bit, now that it's over and we're home and she's safe. But it really isn't a laughing matter because it truly could have been a lot worse than it was. We were running at a pretty good pace and she went right down, caught most of her weight with her hands and wrists, but then hitting her face on those rocks. I mean, like I said, it could have been much, much worse. She could have had a severe concussion, major head injury, broken nose, broken orbital bone, whatever. It could have been much, much worse. Now, you can't really prepare for tripping on a trail, but, maybe if we had known the trail a little bit more, we could have made better decisions up to that point. You know, we like to run trails, and it's inevitable. I think, you know, if you run on rugged terrain, there's going to be a point where you know, clip your toe and you trip. You know, having it be a new trail and running on a new trail, that's, you know, that's not really the issue here. But certainly if we would have known the trail, we probably would have just gone back the way we had come. Unfortunately, like I said, most of the trails in this park are 1.5 miles to 2 miles long. So we knew that no matter which direction we headed on the trail, we would eventually get to the end. But not all state parks or national parks are like that. Some of the trails go forever, and some of them aren't very well marked too in some cases. So, you know, if there was a scenario where you kept walking, I mean, it could have been completely dark. It could have been at a point in the evening where there were no park rangers around, and you'd be stuck overnight in a situation like that. So being prepared with more than just one bottle of water and more than just a cell phone with half battery left, it's smart to, you know, no matter how short you think the trail is, or no matter how easy you think the trail is, it's probably a good idea to take some additional supplies with you. You know, and with temperatures now this time of year getting to, you know, high 30s, low 40s in the evening, it would have been a very uncomfortable night in the woods had we not made it out. Having a pocket knife, some matches, maybe a snack or two along with you. Again, even though the trail is quite short and you think you know the area, you never know what could happen. What if she had broken a wrist or broken a leg or had a really severe head injury and she was forced to stay out there by herself while I went to get help? It's just, there's a lot of scenarios that could have unfolded that would have been or could have been a lot worse than what it actually was, but it's probably a good idea to be prepared for everything. Everything turned out okay, and everyone's safe and sound back at home now, but it truly did open our eyes to a few things, and we're going to make a few adjustments as we go forward and continue to explore some of these trails and hopefully broaden our horizons and explore some trails in other states and other regions of the country. But the reality is that you can't ever be prepared for every single scenario because you just never know. But what you can do is take the steps, just a few key steps, in order to mitigate some of those risks. Let us know in the comments below if you've survived any crazy situations in the great outdoors. We're always interested in hearing everybody else's stories. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. I appreciate the support up to this point very, very much. More stuff coming for the channel, so hope you'll stick around and subscribe if you haven't already. Again, thanks for watching. See you in the next adventure. Your face is broken, don't forget.
My face is broken.